So let me give you now what I consider to be the 5 essentials, the things that you need to do consistently every day. Stay focused on these 5 things if you really want to be successful in your business. I don't put them in any particular order, so number 1 isn't more important than number 4 or 5. I just have 5 things that you need to do every day. So remember this. If you know what is important, I'm going to give that to you now, and you do it consistently, you will be successful. I guarantee it. As I said, my name's John, and I'm your friend. So let's see what 5 things matter. They should matter to you. They should matter to the people on your team. They should matter to your business. They certainly are going to matter to the people that become part of your team. What are those 5 essentials? Number 1, growth matters. And again, as I said earlier, I think this is, network marketing sweet spot, really helping people grow. If you were to sit down and have a conversation with me one-on-one, and boy, wouldn't that be wonderful? I sure love to do that sometime with you, just to have a one-on-one conversation with you. And you looked at me and said, John, okay, you've had a pretty successful life. Can you tell me what's the key to your success? Now, you would think I would probably say leadership, because I'm known as a leadership guru. But if you asked me what the key to my success would be, I would say personal development and growth. The key to my success was stimulated by my father, who just passed away just recently. He passed away at 98 and a half years of age. But when I was 17 and I shared with my dad that I wanted to give my life to adding value to people and helping people, I wanted to be a speaker. I was going to enter the ministry. And my father gave me some great advice as he pulled me aside and he said, son, I love what you're wanting to do. He said, but I'm going to tell you, he said, put water in the well. And he sat down and explained to me that every day I needed to make sure that I was putting water in the well so that when I needed to put the bucket down, I could draw water out of it. And basically he was saying, John, you've got to grow yourself so that you can pass on all the things that you're learning to other people. Now, that was my first my first introduction to personal growth as far as advice was concerned. But my father, who was so wise, years before that, I'm the middle child. I have an older brother, a younger sister. My father, when we went into the 7th grade, he put us on a reading program. You'd think that he was with My Daily Choice. He put us with a reading program of which he picked out the books, and he paid us an allowance to read the books. In fact, what he did is whatever the book cost, when we read the book, he would pay us what the book cost. That would be our allowance. And he would select the books, and it was life-changing for all 3 of us. Now, my friends, they got paid to do chores. That's how they got their allowance. And in fact, they would talk about, how they got paid to do chores. We weren't getting paid to do chores at all. So I went to my dad one day and I said, Dad, all my friends get paid to do chores. I don't get paid to do chores. I think that's a good idea, don't you? And Dad said, no, I think it's a terrible idea. So what do you mean? He said, you do chores because you're part of the family. And I don't pay you to be part of the family. I don't pay me, I don't pay your mother, I don't pay your brother, I don't pay your sister. We are not paying you to be part of the family. We do chores because that's what family does. We do chores for each other. And so because of that, at that time, they taught me that if I really wanted to do well, that what I needed to do is I needed to read the books, and my dad picked them out, and it changed my life. If you talk to my brother, my sister, myself, we would tell you the most life-changing practice in our family was reading great books. So I got on a reading program as a 7th grader. This was absolutely wonderful. It helped me so much. And in that process, I began to grow. So when I talk about the classic books, How to Win Friends and Influence People, when I talk about the magic power of thinking big, Think and Grow Rich. All the books that I can talk about that you know are the classic kind of personal development books, I read them in the 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. And by the time I graduated from high school, I was so far ahead of my peers because my father was very intentional in putting good books in my hands. In fact, a few years ago, I was on a plane. I was going to Brazil, São Paulo. And there was a magazine on the plane, and in the magazine there was an article about the 25 books that you need to read to be successful. And I thought, well, this is an interesting article, and so I picked it up and I began to read them, and they would have the book and then maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs describing why the book would help you be successful. And I read the article. In fact, I was very pleased. One of my books was in the 25, and I thought, oh my gosh, that made me feel good. And when I finished, I said to myself, wow, I read a lot of these books when I was in high school, junior high school. So I went back and I counted up of the 25 books, 19 of them I had read by the time I graduated from high school. My father had put them in my hand. By the way, the reason I hadn't read the other 7 is they hadn't been written by the time I graduated from high school, including my own book. Now, what am I saying? I'm saying that for my children, I did what my father did. I paid them an allowance to read books. For my grandchildren, I paid them an allowance to read books. One of the greatest practices you can ever have for your family is pay them an allowance to read great books. What wonderful way for people to develop, and what wonderful way for people to grow. So my father in the 7th grade put me on a growth plan. And when I was 17, said, put some water in the well so the well isn't empty. And then when I was in my 20s, I was having breakfast with one of my mentors, Kurt Kampmeyer, and he asked me a question. He said, John, what is your plan for growth? And I didn't have a plan for growth. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, what do you intentionally do to grow yourself? And I never had anybody ask me that question, and it kind of threw me. I thought, oh my gosh. And I didn't know how to answer him, and I was a young leader, and so I thought I had to have an answer, which that's foolish. And so I told him all the things I was doing in my work and how I was, diligent and faithful, et cetera. And he just listened to me. And when I finished, he just smiled. He said, you don't have a plan, do you? I said, no, I don't have a plan. Then he said words that changed my life. He said, John, growth, personal development is not automatic. That day, he helped me understand that if I was going to have to grow, I was going to have to be intentional, that it wasn't going to be an automatic process. Just because I showed up to work, just because I was a good person, didn't mean I was going to grow. In fact, he told me that day, he said, John, getting older is automatic. Getting better is not automatic. Well, that was eye-opening to me. I started going to my friends and asking them if they had a plan for growth, and I discovered none of them had a plan for growth, not one. I'll bet in 6 months, I asked 300 people, do you have a plan for growth? No. And all of a sudden it hit me. We were all going through life hoping to grow, thinking that we could probably grow, but none of us had a plan. None of us had a game plan. None of us were intentional. I can still remember, it took me about 6 months to find Success Motivational Institute. Paul Meyer was the founder of that. Before he passed away, he became a great friend of mine. And I found that for $799, I could get a goal-setting kit, of which took me 6 months to get the money for that and save up the money. In fact, it was 1 month's salary. And I finally did, and I bought that kit. And I can tell you, I went through that for 3 years. I went through that personal goal setting, through the workbooks, the cassette tapes, all the exercises, everything that they asked me to do. And it was life-changing for me. It helped me to become intentional in my personal growth. And I've had a personal growth plan for the entire life since I heard Kurt Kampmeyer say growth was not automatic. In fact, if you went to my home office, where I sit at my desk, if you just looked over to the right, not very far at all, about maybe 10 feet from me, is a personal growth kit. The one that started me off on my personal growth journey. And it was life-changing. In fact, when people talk about investment, I sometimes, if they're in my office, I'll just point to there and say, that was my greatest investment ever made. It cost me $799, 1 month's salary. And guess what? It's returned millions of dollars to me because it set me on a path of personal growth. And here's what is essential for you and I to know. The only guarantee that you have, the only guarantee that I have, that tomorrow is going to get better than it is today is because I'm growing right now. That's the only guarantee. So when I ask people, how's your future look? Well, I'm hoping business will do well. I'm hoping things will come. No. That hope's not a strategy. It's not a guarantee. The only guarantee that I'm going to be better tomorrow than I am today is that I'm growing right now. So what does personal growth do for me? Since personal growth really matters, what does it do for me? Well, it does three things. Number one, it keeps me in the game. And what I mean by that is the fact that because I'm personally growing, I'm continually learning, I have things to share. When I talked about 80-some books that I've written, somebody says, well, how can you write that many books? Well, I can write that many books because every day I read, every day I think, every day I file. I'm constantly consuming material. You see, if you're not growing, even if you're talented, you'll just be a one-hit wonder. And one-hit wonders, that's what they are. They just, for a very brief time, they shine, and then they're gone. I don't mean this unkindly, they're the Debbie Boons of life who had a great hit, You Light Up My Life. I think it was number one like for maybe 3 or 4 months, and it just the most popular song, You Light Up My Life, You Light Up My Life, and everybody loved it, I loved it. But can I tell you, after hearing Debbie sing You Light Up My Life about 100 times, it's kind of like, wow, can you light anything else up? Do you have another song? Do you have anything else to sing about? The answer was no. One-hit wonder. You see, when you're personally growing and you're personally learning and you're personally applying and you're personally taking action and you're personally teaching others, your world is ever expanding. And it doesn't stop expanding until you stop growing. And the moment you stop growing, it stops expanding. In fact, let me just say this. I'm 73. My growth potential right now is greater than it ever has been. I'm 73. But you see, what happens is if you are on a personal growth plan and if you intentionally grow yourself, what you do is you every day expand your growth capacity. My growth capacity is off the charts. My learning capacity, it's off the charts. Why? Because I've been doing this for 50 plus years. The way you develop great capacity, if you want muscle capacity, go to the gym. If you want mental capacity, start studying. I mean, your growth capacity is a result of the fact that you continually stay in the growth game. So my personal growth not only keeps me in the game, keeps me fresh, keeps me writing, but the second thing it does, it helps me play the game better. I not only get to stay in the game, but I keep improving the game. Great story. One of my early mentors when I started writing books was a very successful writer himself. And he kind of took me under his wings and mentored me and helped me learn how to write because it wasn't a natural gift for me. And I can remember, probably it was about my 5th or 6th book. It just was published, and I got the first one off of the press. And I was going out to Colorado to have dinner with my mentor and his spouse. So I decided to take the book to him and sign it over to him. It was the first book off the press, and I was proud of it. And so we were at dinner, and I pulled it out, and I handed it to him. I said, I just got the book today before I got on the plane, and I wanted to give it to you. It's the first book, and I want to thank you for your influence. We just said some nice words to each other. It was just warm, just like you would expect it to be. And then I'll never forget, he leaned into me, and he asked me a question. He said, John, let me ask you something about this book. Is it your best book? And I said, yeah, it is. It's my best book. And he said, good. I'm glad to hear that. He said, always remember you're only good as your last book. So never get lazy. Never get sloppy. Don't, after a while, if you get a reputation, think that you can give a product out that isn't excellent just because you've got a good name and a good brand now. He said, just remember, you're only as good as your last book. And he said, when you don't do a good job on your last book, when people read it, they'll say, oh, that's not that good. He said, the next time they see your book, they're going to ask themselves the question, should I buy the book? He said, never put the reader in the question, should I buy the book? The reader should always say, if it's a Maxwell book, I got to have it, because you're constantly getting better. The only way that you and I can constantly get better is by increasing our growth capacity, which allows us to keep expanding our world. When I think about books yet to write, I get very excited because I have several books. I don't know, 12, 13. It's usually I keep probably 12 to 13 books kind of in my mind that I want to write. And when I write a few, because I keep learning and expanding, I get another few. And we just keep about 12 out in front of me all the time. And it's a very exciting time of my life. Why? Because I'm constantly growing. And let me just say this. It not only helps me, my personal growth not only keeps me in the game and helps me play the game better, it helps others play better also. Because when I get better, guess what? The book gets better. The talk gets better. The mentoring gets better. The relationship gets better. You get to get better. I cannot give to you what I don't have. So every day I have to understand, the more that I have, the more that I've learned, the more that I've found, the more that I've received. If I'm a river, not a reservoir, I just let that flow through me, and guess what? It passes right on to you. I love that. And so what I have done is I have purposely, intentionally defined what a growth environment is for me. So Kurt Kampmeyer said, John, if you're going to grow, you have to be intentional. It's not automatic. Well, I wasn't privileged to be in an organization like you are, and I wasn't in my daily choice. I started off as a pastor, and I was in a very small organization that honestly wasn't progressive at all, wasn't successful at all, to be honest with you, okay? Their idea of progress was moving backwards slowly. That was the environment I was in. I didn't have any heroes. There were no heroes in my organization. I didn't have anybody to look up to. I didn't have anybody to follow their footsteps in. Their footsteps weren't going in the right direction. I was in a non-growing environment. I had a passion to grow, but I didn't have a growth environment around me. And so literally at the age of 26, I sat down and I asked myself, what does a growth environment look like to me? And in the process of writing down what a growth environment looks like to me, and I'm not going to give you all of them. They're in the book, The Power of Five, but for time's sake, I'm just going to give you a few of them. Here's what I want you to know. The 10 things I wrote down of what a growth environment looks like, I can tell you I wrote that down almost 50 years ago, and I had not changed one of them in 50 years. They still are as solid as could be. For example, a growth environment is a place where others are ahead of you. In other words, you're not the best in the class. You're not number one in the class. I'm believing and thinking that at my daily choice, you've got people in that organization that are ahead of you. And it's good to have people that are bigger than you, better than you, more successful than you, faster than you, more experienced than you. It's good to have somebody out in front of you that they've gone where you haven't gone, and they've done what you haven't done, and they've been what you haven't been. And so you've got something to go for and shoot for and run for. In fact, let me just say this to you. If you're at the head of the class, in all probability, you're in the wrong class. Because the moment I become at the head of the class, now no longer do I have anybody challenging me, stretching me, letting me know that there's territory yet for me to discover in my life. when I become the head of the class, what I do is I start teaching other people how to be successful. And the moment I start just teaching other people how to be successful, I stop doing what I did to become successful. Wow, I stopped growing myself. So a growth environment is when people are around you and they're bigger and you better expose yourself to bigger people, better people. Bigger people make you feel bigger than you are. Better people make you feel better than you are. So you want to have people that are ahead of you. A growth environment is a place where the atmosphere is affirming, that you're encouraged, that the people around you are pulling for you. They're lifting you. They're believing in you. And that's, again, one of the wonderful things I think about network marketing organizations is that's exactly what happens. You get into this belief environment and in this positive environment, which just brings out the best in you. A growth environment is a place where failure is your friend. That it's okay to fail. It's okay to mess up. That you are learning that, you're never good the first time, and you're probably not too hot the second or third time either. And so you're kind of falling around and flailing and failing, and it's okay because you're in an environment that's affirming, that just says, hey, it's okay, I failed too. In fact, get back up. You can get back up. It's a beautiful environment to be in. A growth environment is a place where other people around you are growing. You're not the only one that is growing. Wow. In fact, as a young leader, when I developed that list of what a growth environment looks like, I had to intentionally put myself into a place that had that growth environment. And again, I'm just so excited to come to you at My Daily Choice and say to you, it's wonderful that you can be part of an organization that provides that kind of growth environment. And so, let me just give you one little quick thought on personal growth, and then we'll go to the second thing, because there are 5 things that really matter for you to be successful in your business. When I was developing myself and growing myself, I heard Earl Nightingale say that if you would spend 1 hour a day, every day, on the same subject for 5 years, that at the end of 5 years, you would become an expert on that subject. And I was just at that time, I was a young leader in my 20s, and I was falling in love with leadership, and I came to the conclusion that everything rises and falls on leadership, and I said, I want to be an expert in leadership. I want to be at the top of the class in leadership. And so I took Earl Nightingale up with his challenge. I did. I literally said, I'll give 1 hour a day, every day for 5 years on the subject of leadership. And so I talked to people that were leaders. I practiced leadership. I read leadership. I did everything I could to keep in a leadership conducive environment. But I kept thinking of the 5 years. Earl Nightingale said in 5 years, I'd become an expert, and I want to become an expert. So I've got to stick with this game for 5 years. And so back then, personal growth was kind of like a timeline. I'm okay, 5 years, I could become an expert. And so when I finished my first year, I was at 4, then I got to 3, and now I'm Mr. Cape Canaveral doing a countdown, and I'm about halfway into this 5-year timeline of growth, and something happened to me. Totally surprised me, didn't plan for it. But all of a sudden, I began to change. You see, every day I was growing. Every day I was reading about leadership. I was learning about leadership. I was talking to leaders. I was having leadership experiences. And every day I was practicing leadership. So I was becoming a better leader. And as I kept the countdown of 5, 4, 3, how long will it take? How long will it take? How long will it take? About midway in that 5-year stretch, because I was growing and learning and getting better, and I was seeing results of my better leadership, all of a sudden, one day I quit asking the question, how long will it take? The day I stopped asking the question, how long will it take, because I knew then that personal growth is not on a timeline, I changed the question from how long will it take to how far can I go? This is absolutely huge. How far can I go? Now growth was not something to finish or to be done with. Growth was my pathway to my future. And that as long as I kept growing, I would keep expanding and my world would get bigger and my world would get better. And I've never asked again, how long will it take? In fact, when it comes to personal growth, there are two questions I don't ask. How long will it take, or how much will it cost? Because I know that the greatest investment I can make in myself is a personal investment of personal growth. And I know the best investment I can make in myself is to expand my future and have a better day tomorrow than I have today. And so today, I don't think there's a finish line in my life at all. I'm continually growing. I'm continually expanding. I have more companies now than I've ever had before. I have more people with me in the leadership game than I've ever had before. It's absolutely amazing and exciting what's happening. My best days are still ahead of me. But hey, when my father was 95, he was still working full time. And at 95, we were having lunch one day and he looked at me and said, John, he said, I've been thinking, he said, I think the best days are still ahead of me. He's 95, he thinks his best days were still ahead of him. I know people that are 25 that don't think that. So what gives us such hope? What gives us such a contagious sense of accomplishment in our life? It's because we are committed to personal development and growth. And I applaud you. I applaud you because you're part of my daily choice in the fact that you wanted to grow yourself and you wanted to get better for yourself. And I salute you and I honor you because you're wanting to grow. And as you grow, you will get better. There is no doubt about it. That's one of the 5 essentials to really be successful in your business. So, let's go to the second one, okay? Again, they're not in any order of priority. They're just 5 things that you need to do to accomplish great things in your business. The second one is about connecting with people. I want you to know that connection matters. Just like growth matters in your personal development, connection matters. The ability to connect with people. In fact, connection is the lifeblood. It's the foundation of leadership because the foundation of leadership is relationships. That's just a fact. In fact, when people talk to me about leadership, I define leadership very simple as leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. So people come to me and say, well, if leadership is influence, then how do I get influence? And I share with them, it's very, very simple. You get influence by developing good relationships with people. So many times in the area of leadership, people think of loneliness. In fact, we hear the expression that we think is a leadership expression when people say, well, you know, it's lonely at the top. I don't think so. Let me just say this. If it's lonely at the top for you, you're not a leader. You may be a hiker, but you're not a leader. Because leaders are surrounded by people. If leadership is influence, if you're at the top, there ought to be a whole bunch of people at the top with you. In fact, if you're top all alone, well, probably, to be honest with you, you have a personality disorder. You lack emotional intelligence, that's probably for sure. But if you're lonely at the top, here are my suggestions. Get off the top. Go down in the valley, find the people. Because here's what I know. Connecting matters because leaders find their people before they lead their people. And to find people, that means that as leaders, we go to where they are. You see, there's a mistaken idea that if we're the leader, we're at the top of the mountain, we're up there, we're saying, come on up the top, come on, I'm up here, you can get to the top too, come on up, I'm waiting on you. No. If you're at the top all alone, you go down. In fact, you don't go to the top without people. And you slow your pace because you're bringing people with you. And it's okay. What you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to the top, but I'm not going to the top alone. You want to come with me? And you start gathering people and you start slowly bringing them to the top. There are several laws that I've written about in the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, but there are a couple I want to mention to you right now. One of them is the law of connection, which basically says leaders touch a heart before they ask for a hand. I like that law. It's true. You connect with people at the heart level before you ever ask them to join your team and help you. Another law is the law of buy-in, which basically says people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. I have leaders all the time say, I've got this vision. What do you think? Do you think the people will follow me? And I look at them and say, they'll follow you not because of your vision. They'll follow you because they connect with you and you connect with them. Do they like you? If they like you, they'll follow you with your vision. If they don't like you, they won't follow you. So every day I do 5 things that helps me to connect with people. This is so simple, but this is so life-changing. And I want to give you those 5 things because, again, these are just connecting principles, connecting practices in your life that will allow you to be successful in connecting with people. And when you connect with people, they'll join your team. And when they join your team, they'll buy into your vision. And all of a sudden, you can build a team. But you have to do it through connecting with others. So there are 5 things that I do every day. Does that sound familiar by now? We're talking about the rule of 5, the power of 5. We're talking about consistency, how consistency compounds. Well, here's one of those 5 things that I do every day. This would be on 5 things on connecting with people that will really help you to tighten that relationship. And the 5 things I'm going to share with you, you can do. There's nothing I'm going to give you today in this teaching that's beyond you. If you don't accomplish it, it isn't because you can't accomplish it. If you don't accomplish it, it's because you make a decision not to accomplish it. And the 5 things I do to connect with people are so powerful and they're so simple. Are you ready? I'm going to give them to you now. Every day. Number 1, every day I value people. I do. In fact, that's why I'm with you today. That's why I'm with you right now. That's why when Jenna and Josh asked me to come and be a part of my daily choice, I said I would love to do that. I would love to be a part of your program. Why? Because I value them. And you know what? I value you because I value them. And I always value people that I value value. You don't have to write that down. But every day, I value people. And all of successful connecting begins with truly valuing people. In fact, I tell leaders all the time, if you don't value people that you lead, don't lead them. Because if you don't value the people that you lead, to be honest with you, you'll begin to manipulate them. You'll begin to take advantage of them. And that's never good. That doesn't work. So every day I value people. I value you. In fact, in my coaching company, we have a statement that I love. It'll work for you. We are people of value who value people and add value to them. The foundation of connecting with people is to have an appreciation and a value to them. You see, when you value people, they come toward you. When you devalue people, they remove themselves away from you. So every day, number 1, I value people. Number 2, every day, I think of ways to add value to people. The moment that I value you, I begin now to come alongside of you and say, now how can I add value to you? Because you add value to people that you value, just like you don't add value to people that you devalue. So now that I value you, every day I'm thinking, how can I add value to you? When I realized that I was going to have the opportunity to be part of your conference and address all of you that are part of my daily choice, the first question I ask myself is, okay, how can I add value to you? And I began to think ahead. What can I say? What illustrations? What teaching can I give you that will just add value? What can I put in your hand? Hey, where's the axe that I can put in your hand so you can go cut that tree? Where's that right tool? The Power 5. What can I do? I'm thinking about how to add value to you. When I was writing the book Intentional Living, I was really working with my grandchildren. We have 5, of helping them to understand that every day they had to be intentional in how they connected and related and valued people. And so I had kind of a practice that went on for almost a year. Whenever I'd be with the grandchildren, I would say, okay, now what are you going to do tomorrow to add value to people? What was I doing? I was teaching them to think in their minds. I'm going to be with some people tomorrow. Who am I going to be with? Well, I'm going to be at school, so I'm going with my school friends. Okay, what am I going to do intentionally to add value to them? I'll never forget, my youngest grandson was James, who was 9 at the time. And one evening we're having dinner, and he looked at me and said, Papa, when I go to school tomorrow, I know how I'm going to add value to my classmates and to my teachers. I said, what are you going to do, James? He said, I've decided tomorrow to open the door for people, so that whenever I'm close to a door and somebody's getting ready to walk into it, I'll rush over there, I'll open up the door. And not only have I decided to open the door, but he said, I've decided that I'm going to smile and say, have a good day. I said, James, I love that. That's intentional. You're thinking ahead of how to add value to people. I love that, James. Do it, buddy, do it. The next evening, he called me on the phone. He was so excited. He said, Papa, I had a great day. I said, you had a great day? Oh, he said, I had a great day. He said, remember I talked to you about opening the door for people? Yeah, I remember. Remember I told you I was going to not only open the door, but I was going to smile and say, have a good, yeah, I remember, James. He said, Papa, I had a great day. He said, today I opened 47 doors. 47 times. Think about it. 47 times. I'm going in and I'm opening the door for people, and I'm smiling, and I'm telling them to have a good day. Now, this is incredible. Now, James is 9 years old, and he already understands that he intentionally, in connecting with people, needs to think ahead of how he can add value to people. This has been a practice in my life for years. Whenever I'm going out to lunch with a person, whenever I'm going to meet with any person, the first thing I do is I ask myself, okay, what can I bring to the table? What can I share with them? And I think ahead of how I'm going to add value to that person, how I'm going to add value to you. Now, every day I value you. Every day I think about how I'm going to add value to you. Thirdly, every day I look for ways to add value to you. When I'm with you, now, guess what I'm doing? I'm looking for ways to add value to you. Now, we discover what we intentionally look for. That's why it's possible for two people to be in the same room with the same people and see things entirely different. We see things and we see people not as they are. We see things and people as we are. So, if I'm intentional in wanting to connect well with people and add value to people, guess what I'm going to look for? I'm going to look for ways to add value with people. I'm going to look for ways to add value to you when I'm with you. And guess what? I'm going to see those ways. Now, how am I going to see ways to add value to you when I'm with you? It's because I'm intentional and I'm looking for those ways. Just like if I wasn't looking for those ways, guess what? I wouldn't find or think of any ways to add value to you. That's why you have to understand that this idea of connecting has a lot to do with being very intentional. Valuing people, thinking of ways to add value to people, looking for ways to add value to people. Number 4, doing things that add value to people. It goes back to that statement of action that I talked about earlier when I said you got to go swing the axe. I'm now with you, and so I'm taking action. I'm doing things that add value to people. In fact, every morning I look at my calendar, I look at the people I'm going to see, and I ask myself a simple question: what am I going to do to add value to those people today? What am I going to do? And I get a game plan. At the end of the day, I ask myself another question: What did I do today to add value to those people? Those are the bookends of my day. In the morning, what am I going to do to add value to people? In the evening, what did I do to add value to people? And number 5, this is all, again, in the incredible power of connecting with people. This stuff really works. Every day, I encourage others to intentionally add value to people. In other words, that's what I'm doing right now with all of you that belong to this incredible organization of My Daily Choice. I'm encouraging you right now in your life to ask yourself, can I do those 5 things? Do I value people? Can I think ahead of how I'm going to add value to people? Can I, when I'm with them, look for ways to add value to people? And can I make sure that I do things that add value to people? And how do I encourage my team to add value to people? I would encourage you to get with your team and discuss these 5 ways of connecting with people and develop yourselves as, get a game plan. And I think what would be absolutely incredible is for you to sit down in that process and begin to share with each other how you're intentionally adding value to people. I think I want to say one more thing about connecting before I continue to go on, because there's just so much to say. I think that I want to say to you today that if you came and walked beside me and as we walked, we talked about my life and success. And you said, John, how did you get there? And I already shared with you that I'd have to point to personal growth as definitely a key to expanding my world. I think I would have to say to you that I started my journey off, my career journey, in my case, my ministry journey, knowing that every day my calling was to add value to people. My calling wasn't to make money. My calling wasn't even and back then, to increase influence. My calling was just to add value to people. What I didn't understand is that as I added value to people daily over years, consistency compounds. And so today, when people look at my life, they say, John, it's incredible the success you have and the places you've gone and positions you've held. And I would just say, it's still as simple today as it was when I began. Don't miss this. You never out-success yourself till one day you say, you know what, I don't have to connect with people anymore. I don't have to grow anymore in my life. I've already had it made. I'm where I want to be. No. The same goal I had 52 years ago, I have today. Every day, add value to people. If you do that, you're going to discover very quickly that connecting really matters. Okay, out of the power of 5, we've talked about growth matters, personal development in my life, being intentional there. We're talking now about how do you value people, how do you connect with people. People are going to buy into you before they buy into the vision, the dream, the team, whatever. By the way, the more that they buy into you, the more they'll buy into Daily Choice. It just happens that way. You sell yourself, you can sell anything else. But the first thing you do without selling yourself first is add value to people. Be sure to be the first giver. Be sure to take the first step of generosity. All these other things will follow them. Number 3, the middle part of the power of 5 is that mindset matters. How I think, how you think, determines so much of our success. In fact, I would be very prone to say to you that without any question, the biggest gap between successful and unsuccessful people is the thinking gap. I've talked a lot about my father because he's an amazing man. He was an amazing leader. When he and Mom celebrated their 50th anniversary, our whole family went to Hawaii for a week to celebrate with them. And one night, everybody had gone to bed except Dad and me, and we were talking. And I said, Dad, you have such an incredible positive attitude. Your thinking is so unbelievably contagious with people. I said, tell me about your thinking and how did you get that positive attitude? And my dad surprised me. He said, I'm naturally not a positive person. He says, I'm melancholy. I think I'm naturally a little bit bent toward cynicism and maybe a little bit of negativism. I said, wow, you sure don't show that. And he said, well, I don't show that because he said, well, let me tell you a story. He grew up in Georgetown, Ohio, just a little town in southern Ohio, not too far from Cincinnati. He said, we were all poor in this little town of about 1,000 people. He said, there were only 3 families in the town that had any money. The rest of us were just poor people. And he said, I was a kid that loved to work, and I was a hard worker. And he said, starting literally in elementary school, by the 5th or 6th grade, I was doing chores for those 3 families. I would do errands for them. And really throughout school, junior high, high school, he said every day after school, I'd go to work. And I'd go to work for these 3 families. And I kept saying, they're successful. The rest of us aren't successful. What's the difference? He said, I was a junior in high school when I came to this conclusion. The only difference between them and the rest of us is that they thought differently than we did. And he said, John, the moment I realized it was how they thought that was helping them to rise above the rest of us, that I determined to learn how to think in positive ways and to become a success. Wow. That evening, I went back to my hotel room and never went to bed. What my father said triggered me so much that I started writing on my legal pad thoughts and ideas, and it became the formation of the book, How Successful People Think. Now, I've had 11 what you would call million bestsellers. I've had 11 books that sold 1 million copies or more. And of those 11 books that sold 1 million copies or more, they're all leadership except one. The one book that isn't a leadership is the book on how successful people think. And it sold millions of copies because it's a book that just basically says you've got to have the right thought patterns for you to get the right return. And I'm going to give you an example. I'll give you an example of my dad that is just stands out. My father was growing up right after the Depression. And it was a very difficult time. Men were out of jobs, and pretty much every day there was no work to go to. They went to the food line, and they waited in line for them to get food for their family for the day. And my father, who was in that environment, in that same town, he didn't go to the food line every day, but every day he would go to a different store in his little town. And he'd introduce himself, and he would say, I know that you can't afford me to work, and I like to work, so I would like to offer you a free day of work. And the store owner, maybe at the hardware store, would say, well, what do you mean by that? He said, well, I like to work, and so can I just work for you for free today? You won't owe me anything at the end of the day, but I'd like to help you. Are there some things you need to have done in the store that you haven't been able to get to? And the owner would say, now listen, you got to understand, son, because my father at that time was just in beginning high school. He'd say, well, now you have to understand now. I can't pay you. I know, Dad said, just let me work for you. And Dad would work hard all day. And at the end of the day, he'd come by and he'd say, well, thank you for letting me work today, and shake his hand. And my father was a hard worker. And inevitably, whoever was in charge of the store would look at him and say, wow, thank you. You really helped us today. I'm sorry I can't pay you. And my dad would look at him and say, it's okay. I'm glad to help you. And then he would say, if at any time you ever are financially able to maybe hire somebody part-time, would you think of me? And he'd give him the contact information, and he'd walk away, and the next day go to another store and do the same thing, and another store and another store. He did that for a month. And by the end of the month, my father had 3 part-time jobs. Everybody else is in a bread line. My dad's going to work. Now, what was the difference? Same town, same time, same environment, but different thinking. And I'm here to tell you that when it comes to our thinking and our mindset, Sometimes I just wish that, I just wish that we could, have a zipper on our head and you could reach in and pull out that mind and kind of scrub it up and wash it up a little bit and just kind of get your mindset right, because I can promise you the moment that you begin to think correctly, everything begins to change in your life. One of the books that I wrote is a book called Intentional Living. And if you're going to be an intentional person that lives, one of the things you're going to have to do is you're going to have to be intentional in your thinking. No one ever intentionally lived without thinking first. So thinking precedes intentional living. And in that book, I talk about the fact that everything worthwhile is uphill. So to be successful in life, you have to be intentional, because you could only climb uphill intentionally. You don't coast uphill. You don't accidentally get uphill. You have to be intentional. You have to think. You have to plan. You have to give energy. Now, if you're going downhill, you don't have to do any of that. But everything worthwhile is uphill. All of your dreams, all your hopes, they're all uphill. So we have to be intentional in our thoughts. One of my mentors was Robert Schuller. And Robert Schuller had that great expression that tough times never last, but tough people do. And I think that's an incredible thought for us right now during COVID-19, and the fact that our attitude is the difference maker. Now, attitude isn't everything. I have people come in their life and they'll say, well, attitude is everything. And if you can believe it, you can achieve it. Those things aren't true. Those are all said by motivational speakers, but it's not true. Attitude isn't everything. Attitude will not replace competence. If you're not a competent person, you may have a positive attitude, but you may lose your job. Now, the good news is if you lose your job, you'll still, I guess you'll be happy. You say, well, I've got some free time now. But attitude isn't everything, but it's the main thing. It's the difference maker, and it's the difference maker in all things being equal. If you've got to choose between two people to hire, all things being equal, experience, education, giftedness, but one has a good attitude and one doesn't, who are you going to hire? You're going to hire the person with a good attitude. Why? Because it has become the difference maker. And one of the attitudes I think that people have that really helps set them apart and helps to make them very, very successful is this: I choose to believe in myself, and I choose to believe in my purpose. Now, I know people who believe in themselves, but they don't believe in a purpose. They don't even have a purpose. I know people who believe in their purpose, but they don't really believe in themselves. And I just want to help you here that both personal belief, believing in yourself, and purpose belief, believing in what you're doing, they have to kind of rise together. Let me explain to you what I mean. If I have low personal belief, I don't really believe in myself, and at the same time, I also have low purpose belief. In fact, I probably don't even have a purpose. What's the result of that? Low personal belief, low purpose belief. What's the result? It's very simple. I won't get started. Well, let's say that I have high personal belief in me, but I have very still low purpose belief in what I should be doing. If I have high personal belief in me, I'll probably get started, but if my purpose is low, I won't stay in the game. I'll drop out. Well, what happens if I have very low personal belief, low self-esteem, a low sense of self-worth? Let's say my personal belief is low, but my purpose belief is high. Well, what that means is that I'll never accomplish my dream. And the reason I'll never accomplish my dream is not because I lack purpose, but I can't see myself accomplishing the dream because my personal belief is not high enough. You see, I know a lot of people that have great purpose, but because they have a low personal self-esteem, they sabotage themselves. And on their way to success, they make sure that they fail, so they'll never have that success. You see, this type of thinking I'm talking about now is I believe in myself, high personal belief, and I believe in my purpose, high purpose belief. Now, when both of those are high, let me tell you what will happen. you will reach your game. That's a fact. And it all begins with how we think. I was doing an interview a couple of years ago in one of our companies, John Maxwell Company. We have a program that's an executive program where once a month I talk to a CEO on a phone, and those in the program, they join with us. And the CEO usually is well known, and in this case, it was the CEO of the second largest tech company in the world. And what happens, the CEO gives about 20 minutes of best practices, what he or she is doing in the business to make it successful. And then I do leadership application off of what they share. And then I ask a few questions, then I open the lines, and the rest of the people on the executive call, they open the lines too. So here we go. You got the picture. So I'm talking to this CEO, and I'm asking the question, and this is, again, how a person thinks. I asked him, I said, let's talk about your mistakes. Let's talk about your failures. Let's talk about the things you'd like to do over. I mean, you like to go back and do them over. We call them do-overs. I said, talk to me about your do-overs. Well, if you could go back and, correct your, decisions, your mistakes, your failures, what would you do over? And what he said that day was incredibly life-changing and powerful. He said, well, John, he said, first of all, I've made a lot of mistakes, had a lot of failures, made some wrong decisions. But if you really gave me the choice to go back and do any of them over, I don't think I would go back. And I mean, I'm quiet on the phone, everybody's quiet on the phone, and there's just kind of like this, 15-second pause. It's almost like we've been disconnected. And the process of being disconnected, we aren't at all. It's just that we're all surprised because he's saying, I wouldn't go back and do any of them over. And I said, well, what do you mean? I'm not sure I understand that. He said, well, let me explain. He said, I've had some mess ups. But he said, what I learned in my failure. Now, this is thinking correctly. In other words, he thinks that failure is a learning tool. He said, what I learned in my failure taught me so much more than what I would have learned if I would have been successful. He said, most of my important wisdom and vital lessons of life have been learned out of my setbacks and my failures. The 5 essentials of leadership, okay? This is my world. Leadership is my world. When I held this book up a moment ago, Developing the Leader Within You 2.0, excuse me, this book was first written in 1981. And this was the first book on leadership to say that you could develop yourself as a leader, that you could improve yourself, that, up until that time, honestly, people kind of thought that leaders were born. And so they would, they would kind of say, well, if you're born a leader, you get a lead. And if you weren't born a leader, I guess you follow. And so when I wrote the book, I just so desperately wanted to help people know how to grow themselves as a leader. And let me tell you why. I wrote another book called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And I'll use as a foundation for my talk with you today 2 of those laws, okay? There are 21, so you get 2. And the first law is what I call the law of the lid. And the law of the lid just simply says how well you lead determines how well you succeed. So now let's talk about real estate for a moment. I know what you do. You show properties, you help to sell properties, you help people find homes, you help people find places for offices. You do a very honorable good work. So the question is, how do you get to the top of the real estate market? How do you excel in your business? And my answer is you excel in your business by, first of all, knowing real estate and being good in real estate, obviously. But the tipping point for you is going to be not your real estate experience, but your leadership experience. How well you lead people is life-changing. Everything rises and falls on leadership. That's true in business, that's true in education, that's true in government, that's true in religion. Everything rises and falls on leadership. I have carried that message around the world for 40 years. And it has been proven over all these years to be a true statement. That if you want to improve your business, improve your leadership. In fact, the law of the lid, how well you lead determines how well you succeed, can be visually taught. And I want to do that with you right now, if I can. So let's say I'm an average leader. Okay, let's say I'm at the brokers conference in Nigeria and Dubai and around the world, wherever you are. And by the way, it's just so good to be with you. Thank you for having me. But let's just say that you're an average leader, okay? And from a 1 to a 10, you're a 5, okay? And so I'm going to visually say that this hand represents my leadership lid. This is how well John Maxwell leads, okay? This would include my leadership abilities and my leadership experience. I'm a 5. Out of a 1 to a 10, I'm an average leader, and my leadership lid is at a 5. Now, here's what I want you to know about your business. Let's say this hand represents my business, my real estate company. If my leadership is a 5, my real estate company, my business will come under that lid, but cannot go higher. My leadership is the lid to my possibilities and my potential. So if my leadership lid is a 5, my business is a 4. Period. End of story. That's a fact of life. I meet people all the time who say, well, I'm going to move to another company because I want more opportunity. And I want to look at them and say, do you understand that no matter where you go, you have a leadership lid? And whatever that lid is, your business is always going to stay under, never go higher, never go higher. In the history of mankind, it's never happened, so it's not going to happen with you. Whereas my leadership lid is a 5, and my business somehow gets above that lid and just keeps flourishing and growing. That doesn't happen. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And the reason that I'm so passionate about teaching leadership to you is because once you understand and embrace that truth, then you begin to be passionate to learn to lead. Just like I'm passionate to teach you how to lead, because if you know how to lead well, your business will do very well. So when I'm doing Q&A, often people will raise their hand and they'll ask the question, John, are leaders born? And when they ask me that question, I always give them the same answer. Of course they are. I mean, think about that question. Are leaders born? Well, of course they are. I've never met an unborn leader, okay? Now, what they're asking is not are leaders born. What they're really asking is when people are born, are there certain people that have leadership gifts, and because they have those gifts, they go to the front of the line, just as some people don't have leadership gifts, so they go to the back of the line. That's what they're really asking. And the reason I'm so passionate about this book, Developing Leader Within You, is this was the first book written that basically said you can grow as a leader. You can develop as a leader. If you're a level 5, you don't have to stay a 5. Let's go back to my illustration for a moment. If my leadership lid is a 5, then my organization is a 4. My leadership lid will keep it from going any higher. But we just discovered that you can develop yourself as a leader. You can learn, you can grow, you can increase your leadership skills. So what that means is I can go from a 5 over time to a 6, to a 7. I don't know. Maybe after a certain amount of time, I can get to an 8. Now, the moment I lift my leadership lid, what do I do for my company? What do I do for my business? What do I do? I now give it room to grow from a 4 to a 5 to 6 to a 7. You see, your business will follow your leadership. Your business will be as good as your leadership is. Your business will be as big as your leadership is. That's why you want to be passionate about growing and developing as a leader. You see, many years ago, I heard Earl Nightingale teach that, this was many years ago, I was in my 20s. Earl Nightingale said that if you'd spend 1 hour a day, every day, on the same subject, studying it, learning it for 5 years, okay? Then at the end of 5 years, you could become an expert on that subject. And I was very passionate to be a better leader. So I said, I'm going to try what Earl Nightingale suggests. I'm going to spend 1 hour a day, every day, on leadership. I'm going to talk to leaders. I'm going to practice leadership. I'm going to read leadership books. I'm going to ask leadership questions. And I did that every day, 1 hour, leadership, 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 every day. And Earl Nightingale said in 5 years I'd be an expert. So I started my growth journey off by saying, wow, in 5 years I'm going to be an expert. And so I'm kind of doing a countdown, 5, 4, 3. I'm looking at the end. But something happened. Something that I didn't expect. You see, as I started my growth journey in leadership, I kept asking, how long will it take? How long will it take? How long will it take? Well, Earl Nightingale said 5 years, 5, 4, 3. How long will it take? How long will it take? But about midway through the 5-year leadership growth experience, something beautifully happened within me. I began to change. I began to see leadership from a different perspective. I began to be able to lead better because I was practicing leadership all the time. I was growing, I was developing, and all of a sudden, I wasn't the same person. I had began to raise my leadership lid, and when I started, it was here, but boy, I'm practicing and I'm growing and I'm learning, I'm experiencing, and so you see. This incredible miracle happened within me. It'll happen within you too, if you'll do what I say. I kept asking myself, how long will it take? How long will it take? Well, he says 5 years, 5, 4, 3. And about in the middle of that 3, I quit asking the question, how long will it take? And I started asking a different question. I quit asking, how long will it take? And I started asking, how far can I go? Life-changing. Now, all of a sudden, I wasn't thinking about 5 years becoming an expert in leadership because I was inwardly growing. I was getting better. I was learning. I was getting more successful. I was leading people better. I was building a good team. And now, all of a sudden, I wasn't interested in that expert leadership title in 5 years. That was kind of small and mundane because now I was growing, and it's not like how long will it take? It's how far can I go? I tell you that story because that's what I want for you. I will challenge you immediately to begin developing and growing yourself. In fact, as I teach you the 5 essentials of leadership in a moment, these 5 core essentials that you just want to have under your belt, I just want to be sure that you understand, be sure that you know that you have incredible growth potential, and as you grow as a leader, you will be highly, highly successful. I also teach in the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, not only the law of lid, there's 21 of them, but another one I teach is the law of process. And the law of process just simply says leaders develop daily, not in a day. And that's why I wanted to give you the 5 essentials of leadership, because what I'm about to share with you is a part of my leadership journey. This is what I have learned as a leader. This is the journey that I have taken, and so I pass it on to you with great honor and privilege and respect for who you are, and I know that it will help you. So are you ready? And the essentials I gave you, the 5, they're not prioritized. Number 1 isn't more important than number 3. It's just there are 5 essentials, okay? Number 1, live what you say. This is so important. Leadership is visual. Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in the world. Very simple. Gandhi said that if you want to see your company get better, you have to get better. It's not a fact that somehow you don't grow, but your company grows, or you don't grow, but your team grows. That doesn't happen. You have to live what you say. There's a difference between positional authority, leadership authority, and moral authority. Let me talk to you about all three of those for a moment. Positional authority is given to you when you get a leadership title or a leadership position. And sadly, very sadly, too often, people get a leadership title or position and they think that they're a leader. Now, that is not true. The position doesn't make the leader makes the position. But we get this title or position, and now people are on our team, and they have to follow us. They don't have to follow us because we're good. They have to follow us because we have a title, we have a position. And regretfully, too many people think that's leadership. Well, in fact, they'll say, John, boy, last week I became a leader. As soon as they tell me they became a leader last week, I know they don't understand leadership. What they're really saying is last week I got a leadership title. Well, that doesn't make you a leader. It just gives you a title. People don't follow titles. They follow examples. And so the lowest of this authority that we're talking about now is that you have a title, you have a leadership position, and that's why I call it positional authority. You only have authority to lead because you have a title or a position to lead from. The second level of authority is what I call leadership authority. Positional authority says, follow me because of who I am. I'm the leader here. I'm the supervisor. Leadership authority says, follow me not only because of who I am, I do have a title, but follow me also because what I say. I say things that are helpful to you and lift you. And so therefore, it's not only my title, but it's also my words. And that's a level above positional authority. But the one that I'm going for, because I'm talking about essentials of leadership today, is the third one, which is moral authority. And moral authority says, follow me because of who I am, because of what I say, and follow me, don't miss this, because of what I do. That's moral authority. When you have the position, the title, when you have the words, and then when you have the behavior and the action. For example, one of the things I try to help leaders do and understand is that they need to live good values if they want their people to have good values. And values are not taught, values are caught. The teaching is what they hear. The catching is what they see. And what we have learned as we have done leadership transformational values around the world, we've trained 5 million leaders in every country of the world. And what we have discovered is, without any question, is that when people learn good values and they begin to live good values, guess what? They become more valuable. They become more valuable to their own self. They become more valuable to their family. They become more valuable to their business. But values, it's on the inside. It's here. What I'm encouraging you to do today when I talk to you about being the example and living what you say is I'm encouraging you to be better on the inside than you are on the outside, and to be bigger on the inside than you are on the outside. I do a lot of work with companies around the world, and in America there's a very successful restaurant company called Chick-fil-A. And I've worked with Chick-fil-A for many, many years. It's as far as the fast food business, it's at the top of that business. And they're great people of values. And Truett Cathy, who was the founder, who's now passed away, but was a wonderful friend. His son Dan now leads the organization, who's a close friend. Truett was pressured by his board to build more stores. And they kept saying, we need to get bigger, we need to get bigger, we need to get bigger, we need to grow, we need to advance. And Truett would say, no, you don't understand. He said, we need to get better. He said, when we get better, the customer will demand that we get bigger. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about living what you say. When I was a young leader, I made a decision. I was only 25, so I was very young as a leader. But I made a decision that has been with me for many, many years now. And I want to pass it on to you because it's helped me so much. And that decision was that I was only going to teach in leadership what I truly lived. If I didn't live it, if I didn't believe it, I wouldn't teach it. Because my temptation as a young leader was to lead beyond myself, to lead in areas that I did not yet know, or lead in areas I did not experience, or lead in areas that perhaps I didn't even do myself. You see, it's not important that you believe me, but it's important that I believe me. And that's what I'm talking about when I say live what you say. Live what you teach. I mean, I just said I'm not going to teach what I don't live. I'm not going to do it. And the result of that is it helped me to become what I would call a transformational leader. You see, the world needs demonstration more than instruction, and yet most leaders, what they want to do is talk all the time. They want to instruct, they want to point, and they say, do this and go there, and that's not what great leaders. The essentials of leadership is, before I ask you to do it, I do it. Before I ask you to pay that price, I've paid that price. Before I ask you to take that journey, I've taken that journey. That's where I get credibility as a leader. That's where I get buy-in as a leader. That's when I can truly say those, what I call those great words, life-changing words that every leader needs to be able to say to his or her people, and those are the words, follow me. The moment I can say to you, follow me, watch me, stay close to me, I'll show you exactly how to do this. Now I have integrity, I have credibility, I have authenticity as a leader. This is huge. So the first essential of leadership is just very simple. Live what you say. If you don't live it, don't say it. In fact, if you don't live it, you disqualify yourself to be the leader of the people. People should only have to follow a leader who lives what they say. The second essential in leadership is for you to lift people by adding value to them. Wow. I want to do a good job teaching this because it is essential to your leadership. A few years ago, I was in Kiev, Ukraine, and I was getting ready to speak to 15,000 people in a live coliseum, and my translator was in the green room with me, and he was talking to me about my books. He said, John, I've read your books. He said, I'm so honored to be your translator. He said, this is just going to be wonderful. But he said, I want to, before you go out, and he's talking to me about 10 minutes before I go out to speak. He said, before you go out, I just want you to know, John, that you believe in adding value to people, and you say leaders always add value to people. That's a very strong core of your leadership message. And he said, you're about to go out to talk to people who for 70 years were under communism. And when you go out and say leaders add value to people, they're not going to understand what you're saying because all they've ever seen is leaders take advantage of people, abuse their leadership position, put themselves first as leaders instead of the people. So he said, when you walk out and you start that message, leaders add value to people, you're going to disconnect with them immediately because they have never known a leader that added value to them. And then I'll never forget, he left the green room, and I thought, wow, I've got about 6 minutes, and I'm going to have some redirection in my conversation and my thinking. So I did, and I went down. I went out that day, and instead of just starting to teach, I just asked them, I said, let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever had leaders take advantage of you? And 15,000 people raised their hand. Yeah, we've had leaders take advantage of you. I said, let me ask you another question. How many of you didn't appreciate that when leaders did take advantage? Oh, every hand's raised up again. And then I said, I'm going to today give you a new paradigm of leadership. As of today, I'm going to teach you a new and better way to lead people. And that evening, for the next 2 hours, I talked on the subject, adding value to people, the first step of every good leader. And I talked to them about, how do you add value to your people? How do you lift your people? How do you make it better for your people? I travel internationally. I speak privately with many presidents. In fact, I have one company that does transformation in countries, and we have 23 presidents that have invited us in to do values transformation for their entire country. And when I'm one-on-one with those leaders, the press is gone, the teams are gone, it's just the two of us. I always look that leader in the eye and I ask him one very simple question. Are the people better off because you're their leader? Would they look at you and say you've added value to them? Or would they look at you and say, no, you've taken advantage of me? I said, that's your question that you have to answer. That's the question I have to answer. That's the question every one of you have to answer in the real estate business. You've got teams, you're building companies. Are you adding value to your team? Now, I'm going to show you very quickly how to do that. I have a very simple formula of adding value to people that I practice on a daily basis. I practiced it today. I practiced it yesterday. Tomorrow I'll do it. There are 5 things I do every day to add value to people. And since adding value is the first step of a good leader, and it's our job to lift people by adding value to them, it's probably important that you get these 5 things. 5 things I do every day to add value to people. Number 1, I value people. That's where it starts. You see, I'm with you today because I value you. I believe in you. I think you have growth potential. I think that you can build a better business. I think you can help more people. I think you can be successful. When you value people, you look for ways to add value to them. Just as if you devalue people, you don't even think of adding value to them. In fact, it's no concern nor interest to you to add value to any people that you devalue. So every day, I value people. I value Stephen. I value what they're doing at GTEx. That's why I'm here with you. I value you. That's step number 1. Every day I value people. Step number 2, every day I think of ways to add value to you. I mean, I knew that today I'd have this opportunity to talk to you about leadership, and so I sat down and I worked on this lesson just specifically for you. I've never taught this lesson like I'm teaching it today. Never, ever, because I value you and I want to add value to you. So every day I not only value you, but I think before I meet you, when I'm with my friends in the real estate world, how can I add value to them? I think of ways to add value to you. Number 3, every day I look for ways to add value to you. In other words, when I'm with you, I say, okay, what can I do? For example, last night I was speaking at a university. In fact, it was a conference of many African leaders, and they asked me to be the evening speaker. And so I walked into this ballroom full of people. And my granddaughter, Hannah, happens to go to this university. And so, I texted her. I said, Hannah, be my date and come to the banquet with me. And she said, yes, I will. And it's a great school. It's called Liberty University. And they literally put on this conference to help leaders. And so So I walked in the room and I sat down with Hannah. We were having our salad and people were wanting pictures. People were wanting me to sign books. And so Hannah, I said, honey, is it okay if I, why don't you walk around with me and we'll I'll sign books. And she said, Pop, I'll be glad to. So I walked around and I signed books. Now, why did I walk around and sign books? I could have sat there and eaten. It wasn't required of me to sign books for the people, but I saw them. And I was looking for a way to add value to them. I thought maybe 30 seconds signing a book for them, giving them a smile, meeting them. I had Hannah go with me. I introduced Hannah. In fact, some of them were having my granddaughter Hannah sign the books for them. And it was a beautiful, beautiful evening. In fact, when we were leaving, I had my arm around Hannah as we were leaving, and I said, honey, I didn't give you as much time as I wanted to tonight. She said, oh, it's okay, Papa. She said, I'm a Maxwell. I've watched you add value to people all my life. Now, just very simple. Intentionally, every day, I value people. Think of ways to add value to people. Look for ways to add value to people. Number 4, I do things that add value to people. You see, every morning I ask myself, who will I add value to? Every evening I ask myself, did I add value to those people? It's a front end and back end, bookends of my day. I start off thinking of ways to add value to people, looking for ways to add value to people, doing, and at the end of the day, I said, well, did I do it? Did I do it? So every day I value people, think of ways to add value to people, look for ways to add value to people, do things that add value to people. Number 5, every day I encourage others to add value to people. I do. And what I've discovered is that the people that are successful in leadership and the people that are successful in the real estate business, they're always lifting up people and adding value to them. Where I live in Florida, I just bought another home. And the realtor, the real estate people that took care of me, I'm telling you, they did much more than just the legal part of property transaction. They were constantly saying, what can we do to help you and how can we add value? And I said, well, there are a couple of other changes I would like to have. And I shared with them, I said, I've bought the house, but I know that's my responsibility, but before I get in there, could you? And they said, we'll take care of it. And I said, well, you didn't charge me. Well, no, it's good. No, you're good. We're glad to do that. And I kept thinking, wow, they're different. They're adding value to me. In fact, they did such a good job. I said, well, here, you can have my house to sell. Now, what caused me to give them my house to sell and another a fee? What caused me to do that? Well, because they were lifting me. They were adding value to me. So essentials, 5 essentials of leadership. Live what you say and lift people up by adding value to them. Number 3, love the people that you lead. In fact, I tell leaders all the time, when you stop loving your people, stop leading your people, because the moment I stop loving you as a leader is the moment I'll start manipulating you and taking advantage of you. This is the line that leaders have to be careful. It's such a fine line and it's so easy to cross. The moment that I lead you for good reasons, I will motivate you, which is always good. I move you for mutual advantage. But the moment that I don't care for you, I'll manipulate you. And manipulation is different than motivation. When I motivate you, we all win together. When I manipulate you, I win, you lose. And I see leaders cross that line all the time. And I ask myself, what happened to those leaders? Why did they manipulate the people? Why did they take advantage of the people? Why were they unfair? Why didn't they put the people first? It's very simple. They stopped loving their people. A few years ago, I did the opening session at the United Nations. So I was speaking to every ambassador in the world from every country. And so, different cultures, different countries, different types of government. There were a lot of differences, but we were all leaders. And so for 2 hours that day, I talked on the subject, 3 questions that followers ask of their leaders. And it was a delightful day. I enjoyed myself immensely. And I want to take a moment. I want to share with you those 3 questions, because I tell you, in your real estate world, when people determine that you're going to be the realtor or they're going to let you be part of the transaction, there are 3 questions they're asking about you. And the 3 questions are, do you like me? Think about it. Do you really want somebody to lead you that doesn't like you? Nah. Question number 2, can you help me? In other words, if I sign up to let you be my leader, is it going to be better for me? That's a very legitimate question. Can you help me? And thirdly, can I trust you? Can I trust you with my money? Can I trust you with my life? Can I trust you in every area? Are you a trustworthy person? Now, those 3 questions. As a leader, I flip those questions around. I know that's what followers ask me as a leader, but as a leader, I ask myself these questions. Do I love the people that I lead? If I do, that's a positive check. Can I help the people I lead? Do I add value to them? Oh, I do. Positive check. Am I trustworthy? Can they trust me? Oh, that's a positive check. You see, love the people that you lead. The 4th essential of leaders to be successful is to lead well during a very difficult time. Now, this has been a very difficult time for the world. We've had a pandemic. We've had COVID-19. Everybody has been adversely affected by it. And I have watched this as a leader as a very interesting time. Because when I say it's essential for you to lead people during difficult times, you have to understand that's the time they need your leadership more than any other. And what's sad is so many times when the adversity and difficulty comes, the leaders are absent. In fact, in America, forget Nigeria, in America, we have a leadership absence right now. We have a leadership vacancy. I mean, we've never had a time when we needed better leaders and more leaders, and we've never had a time when we had less leaders and worse leaders. And somebody asked me the other day to kind of describe how I felt as a leader, and I said the best way I can describe how I feel is, to be honest with you, I'm leadership sad right now. I'm just leadership sad. It shouldn't be this way. You see, it's essential for leaders to lead well in difficult times. And here's what I'm going to tell you right now. During adversity, during difficult times, I hear people say, well, difficult times make a leader. They don't make a leader. They reveal the leader. And what I've discovered with COVID-19 is that this adversity, this difficult time that we're in, has separated the pretenders from the players. Mm-hmm. During this dark hour, there have been players that stepped up as leaders and said, I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to add value to you. I'm going to be counted on. I'm going to be trustworthy. And then there are people that are pretenders. They're gone. They're gone. And so one of the advantages of adversity is if you're a leader, you find out what you have on your team. You find out who your players are. You find out who your pretenders are. You find out the people you can count on. You find out the people you can't count on. I have 7 companies. And when COVID-19 hit, I sat down with Mark Cole, who is part owner and CEO of the John Maxwell Enterprise, all of our companies. And we had a discussion. The discussion went something like this. We've never seen anything like this before. We didn't see it coming. We've kind of been blindsided by it. We don't understand it. We don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know how it's going to affect us, but we have a strong sense that it's going to be an adverse, negative effect on our life. So what do we do? What do we do with the employees? What do we do with our business? And I said, Mark, we do today in this dark, difficult time what we did when we were in the good times. We value our people. We value our team members. We value our clients. We value our mission. We're going to take care of our people. Assure them that the only way that they go down is if we go down with them. That we're going to lead well during a very difficult time. And I can tell you a little bit over a year later, that's exactly what we've done. You see, what I want my people to know is not that I'm a successful man. What I want them to know is that I'm an honest man and I'm a truthful man and that I'm a person that will do what I say and that I will stay with them during the difficult times. And if we go down together. And if we go up together. But it's got to be together. I often teach that respect is earned on difficult ground. It really is. You don't earn respect during the easy times. You earn respect during pandemic times like we're in right now. That's why I'm so glad to be at this conference with you at this in critical time. And that's the fourth essential of being the kind of leader that you want to become. Number 5, the fifth essential is for you to look for potential leaders to mentor. I am passionate about reproducing myself. I'm passionate about having legs to my legacy. I'm passionate about spending my last years, my best years, pouring into people and mentoring them and teaching them. And so I'm always looking for leaders to teach and equip. In fact, the reason I responded to this invitation is because there are thousands of you. And if I can say something, be something, do something, share something with you that helps you be more successful in the real estate market and help more people and add value to them, can I tell you something? This is a very worthwhile hour that we're spending together. But there is no succession without a successor. And the question I have to ask is, who am I handing the baton off to? Who am I empowering? Who am I equipping? Who am I mentoring? Wow, that's huge. Because that's how you grow a great company. I love the story of a tourist, American tourist that were in Europe. And they happened to be in a very beautiful old European village. Their lives were filled with nostalgia as they walked through and saw the cobblestone streets, the cathedrals. It was an enjoyable day, and close to the late afternoon, they were walking through a park and they saw an old man on a bench, and they walked up to the old man and said, "Do you live here?" He said, "Yes, I do." He said, have you lived here all your life? He said, "I was born here." Oh, they said, "We've just loved this village. This is just amazing to see." And so they asked him the question, have any great men been born in this village? The old man on the bench looked up and said, no, only babies. Just babies are born in this village. And I love that story because there aren't great men and women that are born. They're just babies. It's what we do with them after they're born that develops them and helps them to reach the potential that they wanted to reach. So I give my life for people like you. I give my best for people like you because you're valuable. I value you and you're worthy of it. Let me talk to you about, first of all, growth matters. Okay, you're sitting at the table with me right now, okay? It's just the two of us. We're just talking. If you said, okay, John, you're 74, you're at the top of your game, you have 7 companies, you're still growing, blowing, and just moving things out. What is the secret to your success? I would tell you without any question, personal growth. The secret of my success is that I am committed every day to intentionally improving my life. You see, your first investment should be in you. If you wouldn't bet on yourself, why should anyone else bet on you? The first person that you should pour into yourself as far as saying, I'm going to get some training, it is for you, because you see, a better you makes a bigger you, and a bigger you makes a more influential you. And so this whole area of growth is absolutely amazing. And I have been committed for personal growth for now 50 years. I had a mentor ask me if I had a plan for growth. I didn't. And then he said to me, growth is not automatic. And what he taught me that day was getting older is automatic. Growth is not automatic. I don't have to work at getting older, okay? The calendar just turns those pages. So a lot of people get older, but they don't get better. And he said, John, if you're going to get better, you're going to have to be intentional. You're going to have to have a growth plan. You're going to have to be committed to every day developing yourself, and every day just grab a hold of personal growth. One of the things I'm so excited about Paseo is I know that it creates a personal growth climate and culture. I know Daniel, and I know what they're trying to accomplish as leaders, and they want your success. They want your personal success. They want your growth. They know that if you grow, your business will grow. They know there's a relationship between you being bigger and your people being bigger, you getting better and your people be getting better. And so I just love the fact that they have developed what I would call a growth culture. But let me just take a moment and just share with you that one of the things that Visio, they just give you and offer you in so many ways is they offer you a growth environment. And a growth environment means several things. I only have time for maybe a couple now. A growth environment that Visio gives you is the fact that other people are ahead of you. It's a wonderful thing to be in a group of people where you have faster, smarter, better, more successful people than you. Let me just put it this way. If you're at the head of the class, honestly, you're in the wrong class. You see, when you're at the head of class, you're telling everybody else what you're doing, and they're watching you, and you do very little growing yourself because you're expending your time with others. You always want to be around people bigger, better, faster, smarter than you. Every month for the last 40 years, I have what I call learning lunches. And what that means is I ask somebody to have lunch with me, and the person I ask to have lunch with me, they're more successful than me, and I don't even eat that lunch. I just take them out. I've got 7 questions I want to ask them. I feed them, and while they're eating, I ask them those 7 questions, and I learn from them, and I learn from their experience. And what am I doing? I'm creating a growth environment where other people who have already experienced what I haven't experienced, already traveled where I haven't traveled, can help me to get better. So you just want to be in an environment where other people are ahead of you. You want to be in an environment where the atmosphere around you is affirming. Oh my. Where you are encouraged. Encouragement is the oxygen of the soul. So you want to be around that kind of an environment that just kind of speaks into your life and lifts you up and believes in you and helps you get to that kind of level. This is absolutely huge. You want to be in an environment where failure is your friend, where you're allowed to practice leadership, and in practicing leadership, you have some misses. I think one of the big mistakes we make, in fact, I've not written a book on this, and I've not done any teaching because I'm just starting to share it with people. But I think one of the big mistakes we make about failure and success is that we separate them. And we basically say, now, be successful, and don't fail, but, really get great, but boy, don't make any mistakes. And so we take failure and success, and we separate them as far as we possibly can. And that's not realistic, and that's not helpful at all. Success and failure should always be together. I have never met a person successful that didn't have great mess ups and mistakes. I mean, I never had anybody say, well, it was very easy to be successful, and I got there very quickly, and I had no problems, and I had no adverse issues. No. That person's not building a business. They're on drugs. Come on. Success and failure, they go hand in hand. It's out of my failures, I learn and improve, which makes me more successful. In my learning lunches, One of the questions I ask 7, but one of the questions I ask is, how has failure shaped your life? That's a great question. And inevitably, somebody will say, well, let me tell you something. Let me tell you what I learned from my failure. I in my I have one of my companies is a coaching company called the John Maxwell Team, and we have a process of a cycle of success, and in that cycle of success, it is test, fail, learn, improve, and reenter. And we're always testing, trying things we never tried, and because of that, we have some misses, we have some failures. But what's the value of failure? What you learn. What's the value of learning? Improving. What's the value of improving? You get to get back in the game, and it's a cycle. And so we just every time we go through those 5 steps, we just get a little bit higher. We climb a little bit more, and you know. 37,000 coaches in 172 countries would tell you that this really works. This really works. But it only works because we're in a growth environment where failure is embraced as a friend. So when people say, wow, whoa, that was a mess up. Okay, so I have a question. What did you learn? You see, if you learned from your failure, it becomes a real asset to you. And after you've learned, how did you improve? And after you improved, when did you re-enter? So I just want you to know that this is absolutely huge, that to personally grow, be intentional, and have a growth environment. One quick last story before I get to the second one. I was in my 20s. I heard Earl Nightingale say that if you would spend 1 hour a day, every day, on the same subject for 5 years, that at the end of that 5 years, you'd be an expert on that subject. And I was so passionate about leadership and I wanted to learn it. I was just a young leader. I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to spend an hour a day on leadership for 5 years, and I'm going to become an expert on leadership. And so that's exactly what I did every day, an hour, every day. Reading about leadership, talking to leaders, asking leadership questions, practicing leadership every day, 1 hour, leadership. And I thought, boy, Earl Nightingale said 5 years I'll be an expert. So, I'm starting to count down, okay, I've finished with year 1, year 2, wow, I'm in the middle here. I was kind of like Cape Canaveral, 5, 4, 3. And I was going to launch off as an expert before it was all over. But then something happened. It was about the middle of those 5 years that I was spending an hour every day on leadership that I began to change internally. This was amazing. I began to see things in leadership I'd never seen before. I began to have an awareness. I began to sharpen my leadership skills. I started leading better, leading well, leading more. There was a major change going on within me. And now catch this. Up until that time, I was thinking of Earl Nightingale's 5 years and I'd become an expert. So I was doing a countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, off I go. How long will it take? How long will it take? Well, how long will it take? 5. Well, now it'll take 4. Now it'll take, how long will it take? How long will it take? About halfway through this 5-year journey, I quit asking the question, how long will it take? Because I was having inward change because of my personal growth. I was developing my growth capacity. And I stopped asking, how long will it take? And I started asking, how far can I go? This was life-changing. I no longer ask the question, how long will it take? I just ask the question, how far can I go? I'm 74. I haven't even come close to the finish line yet. I'm still growing. I'm still learning. That's why I'm passionate about personal growth. Again, if it's just you and me and you're sitting over here on the other side of the table with me and say, John, what has helped you to be successful more than anything else? Personal growth matters. That's one of the power of 5. Number 2, connecting matters. What I tell leaders all the time is that you have to find people before you can lead them. And connecting is so essential for a leader. It's essential for you. It's essential for me. I have to go find people. which means I have to spend a lot of time with people. We hear the expression, it's lonely at the top, and we think that's a leadership expression. That's not a leadership expression. Let me say this. If you're lonely at the top of the mountain, you're not a leader. You're just a hiker. Yeah, you're just a hiker. Because you see, leaders take people with them to the top. Leaders don't cross the finish line alone. You see, I go down and I find you in the valley and I say, okay, I'm going to connect with you. I'm going to take you to the top. In my book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, there's the law of connection, that leaders touch a heart before they ask for a hand. There's the law of buy-in. People buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. And so every day I work hard at connecting with people. It's a passion of mine. How do I connect with them? In my book, Developing the Leader Within You 2.0, I have a very important chapter on the 7 motivations of people. Basically, the thesis of the chapter is that people are motivated for different reasons, and you have to know what their motivation is. And you have to find that, because then you lead them based on what they want and what they need in their life. You see, the difference between leaders and managers is that managers lead everybody the same and leaders lead everybody differently. They connect, and they connect by asking questions. They connect by finding out, what those motivations are. I don't have time to go through them today. Again, it's in my book, Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. It's a whole chapter. But I'll just quickly give you the 7 motivations. One is purpose. People are motivated because of purpose. In other words, they want to do what they believe they were created to do. They believe they're here for a purpose in life, and that only in fulfilling that purpose will they be fulfilled. And so that they're motivated by what is your purpose in life. There are some people who are motivated by autonomy. They want to be their own boss. They want to have freedom. There are a lot of people in Vaseo that they said, wait a minute, I would like to work for myself. I'd like to have my own freedom. I'd like to have some autonomy. I'd like to own my own dream. I'd like it to be my dream. So they're motivated by that. There are some people that are motivated by relationships. They just want to be and do things with other people. They want to be connected. They love being on a team. Some people are motivated by progress. In other words, they just have to see things happen. When I was in college, I worked my way through college and I literally painted houses. And the one thing I loved about painting houses, there's a whole bunch of things I didn't love, trust me, but the one thing I loved about painting houses is I could see my progress every day. And there were days when I'd say, okay, when I started, I was on this side, and I'm over on another side. And look what I've accomplished. Some people are motivated by progress. Some people are motivated by mastery. And they want to be able to do something so well that they get in that top, 2%. And so they love excelling in their skill and just perfecting it. Some people are motivated by recognition. They just want to be recognized for their accomplishment. They like people to point to them and say, hey, you're the man, you're the woman, you did it. Congratulations, way to go. I love this. Some people are motivated by money. And they just say, wow, I just want to get financially solid. I want to get financially secure. And all of these are important. Why am I giving you that? Because I'm talking about connecting. I'm talking about what are your people motivated for? Look at your team. Find out what's their motivation. And then you motivate them. For example, if I'm motivated by progress, then what you want to do is you want to show me how far I can go and how much I can achieve in your organization. That you just say, hey, wait, if if you look how much progress you can make if you just do these certain things. Well, if I'm motivated by relationships, you want to make sure that I'm with my team and look what you can do together. Okay, you got the picture, but you got to connect with them. You got to find them. You got to connect with them if you're really going to be successful. So we've talked about 2 of the 5. We've talked about the very fact that connecting matters when we connect with each other. We've talked about growth matters, and the third thing that, wow, I wish I had time on this one, mindset, how we think matters. I think the greatest gap between success and failure is the thinking gap. I wrote a book. It's been very popular. In fact, it's sold well, I don't know, well over 1 million copies. It's called How Successful People Think. And it's all about the fact that the thinking patterns of successful people are different than unsuccessful people. I'm not saying successful people are smarter. I'm just saying they think differently. And in fact, in that book, I talk about 11 thinking patterns that successful people engage in that unsuccessful people don't. My father just passed away in 2020. In fact, on July 4th last year. He was 98 years of age. He was an incredible man, had an unbelievable attitude in his life. He worked full time up through the age of 95. And, it was so interesting. He grew up in a little town in southern Ohio, not too far from Cincinnati, just a little town, very little, very kind of a poor town. In fact, he said there were only 3 families that, in the town that basically had much means at all. And so he did errands for those people, and he came to the conclusion as a kid doing errands for all 3 of those families that the difference between them and everyone else is how they thought. Their mindset really was the difference. And when my father was a young man, with the Depression, everybody was out of a job, but my father wasn't. So men were standing in line for food every day, and my father had 3 part-time jobs during the most difficult time of that Depression. And I said, "Dad, how did you do that?" He said, "Well," he said, "no one had any jobs, so I'd go to the hardware store, and I'd just basically tell the hardware owner, 'I know you can't afford me today, but I love to work. Can I just work for you for free?'" And after the hardware store would get over the shock of here's some stranger that wants to work for him for free and understood he really meant it, he'd give him a few errands. My dad would work hard. At the end of the day, he'd shake his hand and say, "Thanks, I loved working for you today." And by this time, the hardware owner was saying, "I'm so sorry, young man. My gosh, I wish I could pay you. You really helped me today." And that's not, no, 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 no. This is good. I know you can't pay me. It's okay. I just wanted to work for you. And then he would say, if ever you start to kind of recover financially and you have room for maybe a part-time helper, would you just call me? I'd love to work for you. Next day, my dad would go to a different store, do the same thing, a different store. Literally, by the time the first month was over, he had 3 part-time jobs. Now, what's the difference between my dad having 3 part-time jobs and everyone else standing in line for food? It's the mindset. It's how we think. It is absolutely the difference maker. The 4th area in the power of 5 is in the area of leadership. Of course, it would be in leadership. You don't think I could talk to you about something that matters and not have leading in the process, but it's a fact that leaders really matter and leadership really makes a difference. You see, in my 20s, I came to a conclusion that has been the motivation for me to teach and write on leadership ever since. I've been writing and teaching on leadership for over 50 years. In fact, the CEO of Random House recently told me that I've written more leadership material than any person who's ever lived in the history of mankind. I love leadership, but the passion of training you to lead and teaching you how to lead comes from a conviction, a conclusion that became a conviction when I was in my 20s. I concluded that everything rises and falls on leadership, everything. I think the reason that Visalia is doing so good is because you have good leadership. I think that the reason that if you're succeeding is because you lead well. Everything rises and falls on leadership. This is huge. It's absolutely huge. In fact, when I teach the law of the lid, that's out of the 21 laws of leadership, I tell people if you're an average leader from a 1 to a 10, you're a 5. If this is my leadership skill set, abilities, then my business, even in Viseo, will be a 4. Why? I've got a leadership lid that doesn't allow me to go any higher. It holds me there. Well, that's a problem, isn't it? How well you lead determines how well you succeed. But here's what's powerful. You can grow as a leader. You can develop your leadership. Yes, you can. In other words, if I'm a 5 as a leader, but I start really practicing leadership, learning leadership, okay, hanging around with Maxwell, okay, here's what happens. My lid goes from a 5, I could grow to a 6. And then maybe I can put it up to a 7. And as I raise my lid, what do I do with my business? I'm now raising the potential of my business. I can go from a 4 to a 5 to 6 to a 7. In fact, your business always follows your leadership. As the leader goes, so goes the business. When people ask me, how do I build my company? I say, well, it's very simple. You've got to build leaders. Okay, there's one more that I want to give you, and that is that significance matters. It just does. Significance matters. Now, there's a difference between success and significance. Success is pretty much about me, what I've done, how much money I make, what kind of house I have, where I live, the car I drive, money I have in the bank. It's pretty much about me. That's what success is all about. Significance is all about others. It's no longer about me. It's about you. How can I add value to you? How can I make a difference in your life? There's a world of difference between success and significance. And by the way, I want you to be successful. In Viseo, I want you to do really well. I want you to be successful. But I want you to be also significant. I want you to take your blessings and your resources and add value to people. You know, selfishness and significance they're just incompatible. If you're selfish, you'll never be significant. And if you have significance in your life, honestly, you won't be selfish. I've known a lot of successful people in life, a lot, many. And many of them are unhappy. But when it comes to significant people that are adding value to others and they're pouring their life into others, I've never met an unhappy, unfulfilled, significant person. Why? Because we were created to be our brother and our sister's keeper. We were created to add value to people. We were created to make a difference. In fact, to be honest with you, Viseo was created to make a difference. They were created to be significant. They were created to add value to people around the world. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're with a beautiful company that has a very high leadership lid so you can grow and so that you can really make a difference. You see, my journey is very simple. I want to make a difference with people who want to make a difference, doing something that makes a difference at a time when it makes a difference. That's who I am. That's what I want to do. And I have a feeling that there are many of you sense the same thing that I sense. You really want to make your life count. You really do want to make a positive difference in the lives of people. And if that's the case, take the power of 5. Take these 5 things that I have shared with you today. All of them are simple. And say, okay, intentionally, I'm going to grow. Intentionally, I'm going to connect. Intentionally, I'm going to have the right mindset. Intentionally, I'm going to lead. And intentionally, I'm going to be a person of significance. If you'll do those 5 things, trust me, you will be on your way to success, not only in your personal life, but your organization. Viseo will be on its way to success. And this is what makes me happy, because my greatest fulfillment today is not in my own personal success. I've already had a whole bunch of that. My greatest fulfillment in life is in your success.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.